Hello, this is Lynn Livesey. I need to do my test. We're testing out some new equipment today. So hopefully everything is okay. This is our second test of the new equipment. Uh, Hopefully everything is going well. And we will find out in a second. So, uh, oh, I think the test is working. Give me another second. Uh, as I said, this is new for me. We're trying out some new equipment. So just give me a moment, please. I just need to make sure everything is good. It seems like everything is good. And I'm in the house. Excellent. So this is going to be our testing out some new equipment. Uh, we're going to be making some changes to this show, hopefully to improve the quality of the show, and hopefully you'll enjoy some of the changes I'm going to make. But one thing that will not change is that I will still be your full spectrum Gnostic, and I will still be here to scare the hell out of you every Wednesday. Okay, so I would like to welcome everyone to this podcast. This is Knowledge from Beyond, and I am Lynn David Livesey, your full spectrum Gnostic. And what are we talking about today? We have a very interesting show. We're talking about living with ghosts. For those who missed the podcast of last week, boy, you really need to go back and hear that one. That one was kind of wow. But we have a lot to go over today, and we're going to continue and keep going out. I'm going to try to look at, I don't have someone to help me read the notes like I did last time, but we are good to go. So we was talking about ghosts and the difference last week, which we didn't finish. The subject of last week was communicating with ghosts. And we went over a lot of things about ghosts last week, but we did not go over communicating with ghosts because we ran out of time. Too many questions. So before we get into today, we're going to finish what we was talking about last week. So supposed to have talked about last week, communicating with ghosts. Now, people been trying to communicate with ghosts for thousands of years. And why would people do that? I talked about last week because they wanted information, they wanted secrets. And today we want to know where the goodies are located, where the will is located, this and that and everything else. But not everybody is into that. Some people want to know because they want to know more about where these ghosts are located. They know, as I told you, there is these worlds. There's the world of the living and there's the world of the dead. And the ghost is located in this world, which is neither one of those two worlds, which is called neither world or purgatory or the land of twilight. It goes by, the Egyptians called it the eternal land of reeds. It's this land that lies between these worlds. Okay. And this world back in the Egyptian days was an empty world. That's the reason the Egyptians referred to it as the eternal land of reeds. It was empty. Today is there's a lot of things that's definitely not empty. Today is more like a giant ghetto. And in movies, they always portray this world where these beings are wearing these super long coats and all this stuff. And this is where you got a lot of things other than ghosts that live in this world. You have some of these, like these vampire creatures and other things like that, and all kind of weird stuff. And when you get into ghost work, you start seeing things. There's ways of capturing ghost photography. You start capturing things other than things that look like people. You start getting images of these draconian beings that have these triangular heads. You start seeing these creatures that have extremely long, tight bodies with kind of like a human face. You start seeing these grotesque type of creatures and a lot of things that looks like out of cartoon books, things that looks like fairies or things that look like aliens or things that look like gnomes or elves or all kind of weird stuff. Okay. Some kind of creatures, you see all kind of weird stuff. And a lot of this is not new. As we talked about last time, a lot of the best ghost photography goes back to the turn of the century because photography was not created to take pictures of me and you. It was created to take pictures of dead people. Remember that. Okay. That's why the phonograph was created, not to record songs for us. It was created to record the sounds of dead people because their voices are right outside of human hearing. This is why when people do with recorders, they can ask questions and play the recorders back and they can get an answer because recorders can hear more than just a human ear can hear. So people was aware of this for a long time. In England, they did some experiments back near the turn of the century in the 1990s where they made contact and they would take film and they would put the film in a box, unexposed film, and they would have their little seance parties. It wasn't like a party because these was people that was going to Harvard University, and they would meet and they would ask questions and talk to these people, and then at the end they would go and develop the film that was locked in a box that was unexposed. And even though they would have this film certified that it is blank, empty film, when they would develop it, it would have a lot of the answers of things they were asking for because they wanted proof. They wanted names, they wanted dates, they wanted images, all kind of stuff was coming out on that film. And there's a big documentary about that. I'm going to try to get the name and post it. And this lasted for several years until it came to an abrupt end. Okay. A lot of things with ghost photography, with ghosts, come to an abrupt end because this is the problem with, I told you, there are these different worlds. The ghosts are always on our side of the fence. Spirit creatures are always on our side of the fence. They get very, very irritable when we are on their side of the fence. And if you're doing EMPs or any kind of ghost work, especially things that are crossing on their side, once they discover you on their side, with EMPs in the beginning, this is why you got to keep moving around. If you keep going back to the same place and doing EMPs, first you're getting very good answers to your questions, and then you start noticing in between those questions, there's people that say you don't belong here, you better quit doing this. Then they start cursing at you, and then later on they start threatening you. Okay, who are these beings? Why are they threatening? Because we're on their side. They don't appreciate that. And this is what happened to white noise researchers, what you see in the movies Poltergeist. They discovered that white noise, when the old TV stations used to go off the air, they did not turn their antenna off. They just left the signal was going out, but they was not broadcasting anything. And people discovered that in that noise, in that signal, you could see things. And people started to talk to those signals and ask questions, and they would see things. And this was fascinating. They made a movie about it. Okay. The Poltergeist movie. But some very bad things happened to white noise researchers. Okay. Several of them had premature deaths. They started getting threats, and on more than one occasion, something crossed from their world into our world. Okay. Maybe it's a portal. We don't really understand. Maybe they don't want us to understand. Maybe they like it that we don't understand. See, this is the problem. We're on their side of the fence, and they don't like it when we're on their side. They like it that we stay on our side, and we don't know what is going on. So let's get into what we're talking about today. Today, we're talking a little bit different. We're talking about not only about things being on our side and their side and the whole 9 yards, we're also talking about something even further and scarier than that. A lot of ghosts on our side of the fence are living in your house and living in here and whatever. And why is that? How come they don't want to stay in that in between world? Because that in between world is a very scary world. Okay. And most people don't realize this, but ghosts and spirits do not get along very well. Spirits do not like ghosts. And what are spirits? Spirits are spirit beings, or what we refer to today, that the proper terminology of spirit beings would be plasma beings, things that are from that, from the other side. Ghosts are dead people which have been unplugged. Now, when you die, as we talked about last week, we are locked in a house. Upstairs is very beautiful. We call it heaven. It's not, it's upstairs. The main floor of the house used to be beautiful, but we just made it look really bad. It's like, oh, well, it depends on where you are, but it's super crowded with 7 billion people. Downstairs, we really don't want to talk about what's going on downstairs, and especially what's going on in those corners over there. That's extremely scary. But we was in the land of the light upstairs until it was our turn. They gave us a quarter to play the video game called Life on Earth. And we went into the dark tunnel and we ended up in our mother's tummy. Okay. This is how we play the video game. Our body is the avatar. And when you know about chakra theory, your spiritual self is the seventh chakra that floats above you. That is your true spiritual nature. And you operate this avatar called your physical body through your 6 chakras. It's the puppet. You are the puppet master. When you die, when your avatar gets damaged or destroyed, the puppet is no more. You, the spirit being, still is there. That tunnel you see at the end of your life, that tunnel of light that people have talked about, not only in Christianity and Islam, they've been talking about that for thousands of years. Ever since recorded history, people have been talking about this tunnel. What is that tunnel? That tunnel is the connection between your 7th chakra and how you're hooked to your avatar at the back of your neck. Okay. That is the connection. Okay. You have a hole in the back of your neck where your spinal cord and your brain meets. That is the connection. That is how you enter into the avatar, and that is how you leave to go back upstairs. When you die, your life energy goes back through the tunnel up to your 7th chakra, and you're supposed to go back to where you came, to the land of the light. But we live on a rebel health planet. We have never been instructed on what to do in life, what to do in death. Okay. There's glimpses of what to do, but we are uneducated. We don't know. We see at the end of our life this tunnel, and we see people beckoning us to go into the tunnel. We see people we know from our life. We see people that have died, and we see a lot of people that we know, but we don't know, beckoning up to go back into the tunnel. These are people we knew in other lives. Okay. But not all of us cross. I give my famous example all the time of why people refuse to cross over. A lot of people refuse to cross over because, as I give my perfect example about that lady who was in the car, and her daughter was driving, and she was in the car with her and her daughter. She got in an accident. The mother died. The daughter lived. And the mother refused to go into the light because she's worried about her daughter and she wants to stay here for her daughter. Okay. Progression is a voluntary thing. No one is going to grab you and pull you up the tunnel. You must go on your own. Okay. So if that lady decides to stay, she is here. Now she's here trying to help her daughter. Her daughter's getting older. Her daughter's now doing things she doesn't like. She is becoming angry. Her daughter's doing drugs, hanging around with that guy, doing a lot of things her daughter doesn't like. This is why ghosts are constantly trying to find someone to talk to. Because most of us, 99% of us, 95% of us, do not have the gift of second sight. We cannot see them or communicate with them. But a few of us do. And if you have that gift, and if ghosts find out you have that gift, you will be overwhelmed. Because ghosts all need you to do things for them. That lady wants you to go and tell her daughter to leave that guy alone and she better straighten up her life and get back in school and this and that or whatever. Okay, ghosts always want to tell you their sad story and they have something they want you to do. I used to know a guy years ago. Okay, see, there's certain people that do that. I'm not saying you're supposed to be communicating with ghosts or sharing your house with ghosts or whatever, but ghosts, we have no idea how many ghosts is in this world. Okay. But we're going to talk about that in a second after I tell you this little story about this guy who could communicate with them. He didn't like the ghosts all in his house because he was married. So he created a room. He took one of his rooms and he painted it. He didn't want to paint it all, all black. He painted it very dark red. See, they live in their world, it's a black and white world. Dark red, dark blue. This is the trick. When kids wanted your kids say, can I paint my room black? And you say no. He said, well, I'll just paint it dark blue or dark green. Okay, that's okay. It's all black. Okay. He would be in his room and he would allow the ghost to enter that room. And he spiritually sealed that room off from the rest of the house. And he would listen to their stories. And he would tell you about how they died and this one got killed and this one drowned and this one's this and this one stayed because of her daughter and this one stayed because, because of his wife or because of his family. He was fascinated by their stories. They will talk you to death because they don't have a life. They're dead. Okay. But there's nothing you can do for them. Okay. I did a reading once on a girl who she didn't normally have the gift, but something got in her and she developed that gift because she became possessed. And she went to the cemetery and was doing things. And then she was directed to go to this house. She drove up to this house. She didn't know the people in it. And she knocked on the door. And she said, is there this lady that live here? And they said, yes, she live here. She said, can I talk to her? And they said, yeah. Do we know you? Well, I need to talk to her. So the lady came to the door and she said, I have a message here from your dead mother and you're dead. And the lady slammed the door in her face. You can't be doing things like this. This is how you end up in jail. This is how you end up in a mental institution. There's nothing you can do for these people. They're not people, they're dead people. They need to let go and go into the light. Now, Maybe they shouldn't have slammed the door in her face. Maybe they should have heard what her dead mother wanted to tell her, probably to straighten your ass up, okay? But how would you react if somebody knocked on your door and said, I got a message from your dead brother or dead this or whatever, and he wants you to, okay? That's just thinking about it is scary. Okay. Now, there is so much. Now, I mentioned something a few minutes ago about we don't know the extent of this ghost world or neither world, but we have a glimpse of maybe how bad it is. Remember, the best ghost photography goes back to the turn of the century, because that is what pictures was taken for. And something was, I'm going to tell you a story. Back around the turn of the century, a photographer wanted to take a picture of a street in, I think it was in London or New York City. It was a major city. So back in those days, to get an exposure on a camera, you had to, the exposures was long, 5-10 minutes. So he set up the camera. He was in a building maybe 5 stories high, and he put the camera in the window, and he wanted to film with the city. There was people on the street, a few people, because it was early in the morning. But since the exposure was so long, he thought most of the people wouldn't show up in the photography. And if 2 or 3 people did show up in the photography, no big deal. Okay. When he developed his picture of that street, there was all kind of people in the picture. And those people he did not see looking out of the window while the camera was taking the picture. And he was flabbergasted on, who are these people? I was standing there during the exposure. How come who was all these other people? And he did this several times. And at every time he did this, there would be way more people than should be in the picture. I always say ghosts are like roaches, but we really don't know. We know that there's 7 billion living people on the earth right now. How many dead people are also sharing this earth with us? How many ghosts is there? 3 billion, 5 billion, 10 billion? We have no idea. And do they have their own cities? Do they share our cities, this and that and everything else? This is what we're talking about today. Sharing your house with ghosts. Because most ghosts are into something called coexistence. What does that mean, coexistence? Well, this is what the paranormal films was about in around 2000. Because we knew there was ghosts, but we thought only haunted houses had ghosts or that abandoned house had ghosts. We didn't realize that regular houses had ghosts until surveillance cameras came out. And this is the problem with having surveillance cameras in your house. A guy who has this problem. He has a surveillance camera in his house, and his camera snaps pictures of things. You're supposed to be catching pictures of people breaking in his house. He haven't caught any pictures of people breaking in his house, but they kept pictures of these light things and this and that and these orbs and all kind of stuff, and they send him pictures at work, and it kind of bothers him. Okay. But that's not the worst of it. There's people that got video cameras in their house, and doors open and close, chairs move, all kind of stuff. This is the problem with having surveillance cameras in your house. video, and this is what these paranormal movies was about. Okay. Because ghosts are into coexistence. Since they can see you, but you can't see them, they know your schedule. They know that you leave every day at 8:30 in the morning and you don't come home till 5:30. They know. They know the house is empty between those 2 hours. Between those hours, no one is there. And now that you got that surveillance camera in your house, there's all kind of things moving around, and it's picking up things, and it's okay because the ghost knows your schedule, and you are sharing the house. You have, they're not paying rent, but they share. Okay, this is actually very scary stuff, and how most people discover they have uninvited guests in their house is that day that they're sick at home. They forgot to tell the ghost they didn't go to work that day. The ghosts know you leave every day at 8:30 in the morning. It's 11 o'clock. You're laying in bed because you're sick. And the ghost opens your bedroom door. And you're like, what the hell? And the ghost is just as surprised as you are. He's like, what are you doing here? You're just supposed to be at work. That's when most people discover, hey, I might have a problem in my house. I was laying in bed and the door just opened on its own. But it's not like the ghost hasn't been there for several years up until that moment. The ghost's been there for a very long time. Okay. This is living with ghosts. And how extensive this problem is, no one knows. No one knows. But you know, but there's a lot of people. Now, most people cannot see ghosts, cannot talk to ghosts. But a lot of people, it's just like we have senses. We feel things. And a lot of people will tell you, we have that closet that we don't use. Or we have a basement and we use the basement, but we don't really use that one area of the basement over there. You go over there, it feels kind of weird. And we don't really go over there. Or we don't, a lot of people have sections of their houses they can't use. Because when they go in that closet, when they go in that room, they feel something and they just leave that room alone. They sense a presence. They sense something. They don't even know what they sense. They just know that. Just leave, I have that room, but, I have a 3-bedroom house and, but I don't really use that room over there. I use it for storage, but I really don't like to go in there. Okay. That's the ghost room right there. Okay. You see what I'm saying? Now, if their ghost is going to do that, maybe they should give you something towards the rent. You know what I'm saying? But they don't. Okay. And why do ghosts do this? Because as I keep saying, we know very little about this ghost world. But ghosts are always trying to find a safe place to hide or to live. This is what people that talk to ghosts talk about. That's why they're looking for a place or looking for this or trying to find a place. Because this world, this neither world, is like a ghetto. It's not a very friendly place. Okay. Ghosts need a place to hide. Ghosts don't always hide in houses. You have a lot of ghosts that hides in water ghosts, water spirits. Ghosts like areas that's kind of swampy, or bayous, or a little, and where I live in the valley, they have a lot of resacas. The resacas are full of ghosts, especially at night, very late at night. You be walking along those resacas at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and you feel things, and you sense that somebody's watching you. Okay. But we really don't know what they're up to. We really don't know. Okay. Because I talk about movies because, reality and fantasy parallels each other. Okay. A lot of times things come out in movies and then we find out they come out in reality. Or sometimes, fantasy, just like a lot of things that we saw in Star Trek that was supposedly fictional back in the 1960s. Now, back in the 60s and early 70s, there is no warp drive. It's impossible to go beyond the speed of light. It's impossible. You can't have transporter beams. You can't have this. You can't have food sensors. That stuff is all made up. Today, we got half of that stuff. Scientists now we have food synthesizers. Now, scientists already have tractor beams where they have tractor beams and transporter, but they have been able to transport pieces of, atoms. And now they're getting into small pieces of matter, which they have been able to move from one place to another. Okay. How come? The same with The Simpsons, the same with so many shows. They talk about stuff, and then years later, the things they talked about in fiction slowly starts to come into reality. Because maybe that is how they inform the public. Maybe that is how they do disclosure. Okay. Maybe that is how they get us to this with the X-Files and so many other shows. They talk about a lot of weird stuff. And then years later, a lot of the weird stuff they talked about, we find out, well, that's what really happened. Or that's what's going on. Okay. Maybe that is how the government slowly spoon feeds us information. Now, back into ghosts. There's so much we don't know, but there was a movie called 13 Ghosts. And in that movie, they had these glasses you could put on. And when you put on the glasses, you could see the ghosts like normal. Okay, without the glasses, you couldn't see nothing. But with the glasses, you could see the ghosts like everything. But that's just a movie, right? We already know that certain frequencies of light can see certain things. And I used to be into photography. I used to be a professional photographer a long time ago. And when I first got into ghost work, I knew about photography, especially in black and white photography. You use certain filters to actually enhance certain things. And you can make the sky brighter or darker or this or that, or you could do all kinds of things with using colored filters with black and white film or with other types of filters, especially when I got into ghost photography. Certain things could start picking up things. And I started to research about these filters. When I started to get very heavily into filters, because I wanted to know, is there a filter like those glasses in the movie 13 Ghosts? Is there actually a filter or a type of, wavelength of glass? And they have glass in all kind of wavelengths that you can actually see things. And I discovered some using polarizers and other things and ultraviolet filters that you could actually pick up some things. But when I got very deep in there, there are catalogs that talk of, do you know certain filters you can only buy, they're for police only, or certain filters are for government only? Did you know that? Okay. Not all filters you can buy, because there's filters that can, you know, see fingerprints on paper money. There's certain filters that can see blood. Even if you clean up everything, they can see blood and things. That is how they do for a forensics after a murder. They have certain filters they can use to pick up almost anything. Okay. There's filters that we know now about, that, well, with that, like with night vision goggles and stuff like that. They have all kind of filters, and some of these filters are thousands of dollars for a filter, but they're for military purposes only. Or this filter is several $100s for police only. What are they doing? But we don't need to know, right? We're eating our Oreos. We're eating our Kentucky Fried Chicken. We don't need to know what those filters are doing. They're doing. They probably already got goggles. They probably already got everything. You get what I'm saying? Okay. We don't know. But how massive this world is. And this is some of the stuff that, when you start looking into ghost work and start investigating and start reading about hauntings and this and that, the same questions we have today was asked 100 years ago. And they knew a lot more. The spiritualist movement in America was back in the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s. That's why they started to make all this equipment. And in the spiritualist era, they was doing all kind of stuff with seances and talking to ghosts, and they was doing all this plasma stuff and whatever. Some of that stuff was fake. But a lot of that stuff, even today, scientists cannot explain. And since today, when you mention ghost work, people almost start laughing. But back in the 1870s and 1890s, you had universities looking into this stuff. You had the Smithsonian looking into some of this stuff. They wasn't laughing. They wasn't joking back in those days. They turned it into a joke because they don't want you and me to know what they was doing. So today you talk about, that don't believe it. Okay. But there's books back that was written back in the 1800s by PhD professors talking about this stuff. Okay. Now, were they stupid back then, or are we stupid today? See, we've been dumbed down on so many subjects that they don't want us to know about anything, because the only thing they want us to know about is how to work for them, how to make money for them, and how to pay taxes to them. Okay. You get what I'm saying? Other than that, hey, you don't need to know about anything other in life than that. Okay. This is where we are today. But I, as a person, is not satisfied with that. For one, because I'm a Gnostic. And a Gnostic wants to know everything. See, a Gnostic wants to know, comprehend, and understand everything. But I don't want to understand everything because, the first Gnostic in the world was Enoch. And most Gnostics throughout history have either, been taken up in whirlwinds or this or that, or had terrible deaths, or was burnt at the stake or whatever. So, or went insane or whatever. So I'm a Gnostic, but I don't want to know everything. I just want to know almost everything. I got to leave that little space. I don't want to end up burnt at a stake or in an insane asylum. So I'm just trying to learn about almost everything. But today is really hard. Because back in the old days, you had people, not even thousands, hundreds of years ago, Thomas Edison, Tesla, all these people was heavy into ghost research. Thomas Edison was fascinated by ghosts. Did you know that? He had several of his scientists working on that subject. Okay. Tesla was working on ghost stuff. Okay. Why is no one know about this today? Because they want to keep us dumbed down. So back to our subject. This ghost world. What I would like to know, I know ghosts live in our cities and things, but according to some of the books, ghosts got their own cities. What does that even mean? Do you mean there's cities in the ghost realm that we can't even see? Okay. What does that even mean? What do this world look like if you had those glasses? Just like when they took those pictures of the street that was almost empty. And when they developed it, the street had a lot of people. There was a guy I did a reading on several years ago. Okay. See, this is a part of why I still do readings, because I'm Gnostic. I'm looking for people with certain abilities. This guy had the problem of when there was a full moon, he would do out of body. Okay. And he was not anchored. I told him how to anchor himself and how to quit doing that. Okay. Because he was very sensitive to the moon. And every time there was moon, he would do this giant out of body stuff. And he could describe the world. When he said, when he would be out of his body, it would be his house, but the house was not in color. It would be in black and white. And it would be the same house, but some of the pictures on the walls was different. And when he went to go to look outside, there was people walking up and down the street. And it was the neighborhood he lived in, but the houses was different. Okay. And I would say, so it's the same, but it's in black and white. He would say, yeah, like the house I live in, it's the same house in black and white than it is in color. But the house also is different because there's things in the house in the black and white world that's not in the color world. It's a little different. What does that even mean? I did work with this lady in Mexico for several years. Oh, she could see everything. I talked about her once before. She married a guy, moved to the border. She couldn't cross on this side, but she lived on this side. She actually got kicked out of the house because one of her things, she saw ghosts as regular people. She talked to ghosts all the time. And when she got married, she moved into his family's house. And the ghost moved in with her. And they ended up kicking her out of the house. Okay. Because ever since she moved in, they heard knocking and voices and this and that and everything else because the ghost was just her friends. They ended up kicking her out of the house. Okay. But anyway, I would go and visit her with a translator, and me and her would have these hour-long conversations. And she would talk about, I would ask her, what did this ghost world look like? And she was like, okay, when I look down the street, some days is more powerful than others, but some days when it's very intense, she didn't know how to control it. But when it's on those days, it's very intense. I look down the street and it's the same street I live in, but it's like less color. And I see regular people going up and down the street, but it's a lot more people walking down the street. And sometimes I see a person. Well, sometimes I see a half a person, or sometimes I see this thing like floating in the air. She said it's the same, but it's different. And she kept saying it's hard to describe what I can see when I can see. They say that it's the same, but it's different. What does that even mean? And how can they say it's the same when you look down the street, but there's a lot more people walking down the street, and there's not only people, but there's some things floating in the air. It's the same, but it's different. Do you know what? That's fascinating. That's also super damn scary. Okay. And if this is going on in America, which is a new country, can you imagine in a place like India, in China, what it's like when you living in a place where people have been living for thousands of years? Okay, can you imagine the ghost problems they have if you live in a place like Rome? Okay, where they keep not building on top of each thing, and they've been building in the same spot for 2, 3 thousand years. Can you imagine the ghost problems they have in a place like Rome? Maybe that's why in Rome is the capital of exorcism. They do more exorcism than Rome than they do anywhere else in the world. Okay. And a lot of people don't know it. People think of Rome, they think of the Pope. But do you know in Rome is also one of the biggest places for devil worship, Satan worship in the entire world. Okay. There's so much going on right below the surface that you don't know about and you don't need to know about, because that would disturb you from your eating your Fruit Loops and going to work and paying your taxes and whatever. You don't need to know all this stuff that's going on. But some people, we need to figure this stuff out. And why do we need to figure it out? Let's answer that question. Because if we're going to evolve, if we're going to if we ever want to be something more than just a cog in a machine where we just born, pay taxes, work, grow old, and die, if we want to one day join with our space brothers or become something more than what we are now, if we ever going to leave this little marble planet we live on, we have to start using this and opening our mind and opening our ability. We know so little of what is going on. Okay. And it's not that everybody is that dumb and stupid, but they just want to keep the general public that ignorant. And with me, I want to know what is going on. I want to know about this ghost world. I want to know, how come it's the same but different? And living with ghosts. How many, in my place, in your place, I asked you, how many people live in your house? 3, 4. If you count the ghosts, what is the number? 7, 9, 10, 12. Okay. There's so many things we don't know about ghosts. Another thing, since I'm mentioning living with ghosts, ghosts do not understand the concept of an apartment. Okay. Ghosts see an apartment as a very large house with different rooms. They do not understand the concept of one family living in one room and another family living in another room, and that is their apartment. They don't get that. This is the reason why apartments have so many ghosts, because it's almost impossible to cleanse. You can cleanse a house, but to cleanse an apartment, and you're only trying to cleanse one apartment in a building, the only thing you can try to do is get the ghost to stay out of that one area. But you cannot cleanse an apartment complex because you have to cleanse the whole building, the whole house. You get what I'm saying? And what the ghosts do in apartment complexes, they just jump from apartment to apartment. They go from room to room. So what you try to do with cleansing of an apartment, uh, you just try to seal them off and make them go around that one apartment or that one room. But you cannot cleanse the entire place like you can a house. Okay. But houses, most houses you can cleanse. I have came across several times in cleaning houses. I cleanse a house three ways. I cleanse it spiritually, then I mechanically cleanse the house because when ghosts moves or spirits move, they leave a trail. And I use a magic mirror. I do ghost work the way they did it back in the 1800s by using a magic mirror and a pendulum. Okay. I don't use all this electronic equipment and whatever. Electronic treatment shows that there's energy over there or this or that. But the problem is when I started to invest in some of this equipment, yeah, there's something over there, but you don't know if it's positive or negative or not. And there's a hell of a difference between positive and negative. And when I clean houses, I do not cleanse positive energy. I only cleanse negative energy. And I have been in houses. This one house I went to, the center of the house was blessed. And gosh, it was like being in a church. Okay. But as you got away, when you went into the extreme other end of the house, it definitely wasn't blessed. Okay. Most places don't have those extremes. Some places do. And when I come across that, I'm only going to cleanse that part of the house. I'm leaving that other end alone. Okay. Because there's positive and negative beams. Okay. Now, this electronic equipment doesn't tell you if it's positive or negative. The old equipment does. That's why I love my pendulum, because a pendulum can detect positive energy and negative energy. Okay. We have a few more minutes. Another thing. As I told you, most houses can be cleansed. I spiritually cleanse the house. I erase all of their markings of the ghosts. We walk on the ground. Most ghosts walk on the ground, but not always. Spirit creatures never walk on the ground. They walk on the ceiling. Ghosts sometimes on the ground, on the ceiling. It just depends. Okay. But they always leave a trail. And what you want to do when you do ghost work is you want to, if you erase their trail, they are creatures of habits. If they normally come through the back door and go into that room, if you erase their trail, when they try to come back, there is no trail for them. Okay. And then by raising the light level of the house, you try to keep them out. Okay. And then you can actually get the house blessed or whatever and use different things. I use sage. I use a lot of stuff. But that in cleansing houses, we could talk about on another subject because we're almost out of time. But which have happened to me 2 or 3 times when I go to spiritually cleanse the house. They tell me you can cleanse the house from the ground up, but you can't cleanse it. Normally, I cleanse it all the way up and all the way down. That's when you know that something, a lot of people live in areas where, especially if you're living in an area that used to be ranch land or farmland, sometimes back in the good old days, people got buried in their backyard. And a lot of houses, which have happened on several occasions, the house is built on hollow ground. Okay. You get what I'm saying? And in those cases, you can only cleanse from the ground up. You cannot cleanse down because they was there first. Okay. And you can only cleanse that, and you can't do certain things. Okay. Because we don't, a lot of old cemeteries didn't exist. Back in the country, people were just buried, behind their houses everywhere. And in those cases, you're just going to try to block the ghost or that person from entering the house by sealing the house off. Okay. This is why when it comes to bug problems, it's good to have a professional. And when it comes to ghost problems, it's good to have a professional to do it, because it's not always as easy as burning sage or doing this or that or whatever. You run into technical problems. And getting rid of ghosts is kind of easy. Sometimes people tell you they have ghost problems and they have spirit problems. And getting rid of spirits is a hell of a lot harder than getting rid of ghosts. Okay. But the good thing is you can have ghosts in your house and not do nothing. Spirits in a house normally, 90% of the time, was called to the house by something you did or by something that somebody did. But they're normally there for a reason. And sometimes they don't want to leave. Okay. Because they was caused by somebody doing something, and they are there. Okay. So, and sage and regular stuff and holy water and all this stuff works very well on ghosts. On spirits, it doesn't always work. It doesn't always work. You have to go with stuff that is a lot stronger than sage and all kind of stuff. You got to know what you're doing. Okay. But it's a good thing in closing that, as I said, most ghosts are into coexistence. Most ghosts are not poltergeists or angry ghosts. And it's important to keep your ghosts ghosts. And what upsets ghosts? Normally, ghosts are creatures of habit. Their ghosts are tied to a person, a place, or a thing. And what can upset a ghost sometimes can be very simple stuff, because a ghost is a creature of habit. And if that ghost's been in that house for 30, 40, 50 years, and you totally remodel the house or do radical things to the house, the ghost might get upset about it, because the ghost liked it. That house was the same way for 30, 40 years. And who in the hell you think you are coming in there changing everything? And then you got knocking. Ghosts don't really have the energy to hurt people. What they do is try to irritate you. So ghosts will knock and they will move a door or do little things or flicker the light or just to irritate you so you will leave. Okay. You get what I'm saying? And that ghost been in the house all that time. You didn't do anything. But once you irritated him, he's flickering the light and doing this and that, and he's doing things. And that's what is the definition of a poltergeist or an angry ghost. And in those situations, you just need to get somebody to come and remove him. We're out of time. I hope this was entertaining, where we went over some things and I tried to jump around for a little bit of everything. If you want me to continue this thing about ghosts, I didn't even scratch the surface, or whatever subject you're interested in, you just need to let me know. And because this is your show, I'm here to try to spread a little knowledge to whoever's willing to listen, whoever willing to want to get beyond this and expand their mind and consciousness. I am here for you. And with that, I'm out of time. I want to say thanks for listening. Share this with your friends. I'm here every Wednesday on the Spirit Room Network, and I am on my own Facebook page. I'm now simulcasting everywhere, but we're all together and we need to move forward. This is Len David Livesey, your full spectrum Gnostic. I'm out of here. Thank you. Bye.